Members of Council, ladies and gentlemen, the acting clerk informs me that it is now 7 o'clock, so I will call this council meeting of January 21st, 2019 to order, and I would ask you please to stand and join with me in a moment of silent reflection and our national anthem, O Canada. Members of Council, just before I get to disclosures of conflict there, Mr. Clerk, are there any agenda announcements or amendments this evening?
Yes, Your Worship. Just a few of them. Council approved a new process for the in December of 2018, which eliminated the Committee of the Whole. So the acting mayor will be in the chair for starting with tonight's meeting at public meetings, and will be in the chair till the end of the meeting. Under consideration, report CORS 119, council member board appointments. Councillor Di Lorenzo did not withdraw his nomination for the Halton Health Care Board, so there will be a vote for that position as well. Also, Dr. Carley would like to speak to Council regarding the Grand River Conservation Authority appointment. There's 3 additional items for consideration from the addendum agenda. Item 4 will be report CORS 0619, authorization of 2019 capital expenditures. Item 5 will be report CORS 719, outsourcing dog licensing. Item 6 will be report ES 319, service delivery, review, scope of work approval, and roster establishment. And one other minor technical change, the bylaws have been renumbered from 1 to 5 instead of 2 to 6. And they will be dealt with after the council deals with the confidential session at the end of the meeting, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members of Council, are there any questions with regards to the announcements and/or the amendments? If not, we will proceed. Is there any member that has a disclosure this evening? Councillor Malbuff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 disclosures. The first one, item number COMS-002-19, community funding application number 14 in the Schedule C. Item involves funding for the Milton Curling Club, and I am a member of that club, so I'm declaring an interest. The other one is CORS report -007-19, outsourcing dog licensing. As the item deals with a bylaw enforcement matter, and I have a family member employed in bylaw enforcement for the town of Milton, I'm declaring a conflict.
Mr. Clerk, were you able to get those disclosures? Okay. Councillor Cluett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have a disclosure for consent item number 3, which is the COMS 00219, and it's paragraph number 2 for the community fund allocations. As I am a member of the fundraising cabinet for the United Way of Halton and Hamilton, and I also declared this, stated that I declared this at the same time at the last CSAC meeting as well for this conflict of interest.
And I thank you. Are there any further disclosures? Councillor Ali?
This is also for consent item 3, COMS 00219. I'm a member of the Italian Canadian Club of Milton and District.
I thank you. Any further disclosures? I believe, Mr. Clerk, that there are the appropriate resolutions to exclude those members that have the disclosure to be dealt with, I believe.
That's correct, Your Worship. We will vote on those items separately.
Okay, they will be voted on separately. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also a member of the Italian Canadian Club of Milton. I'll disclose that.
Okay, with those disclosures,
I'm also a member, and in surplus of caution, I'll also disclose that as well, and I'll sign a document today as well and give it to the clerk. Member of the Italian Canadian Club of Milton.
thank you very much then for that. And every once in a while, members of council, we do run into that, but it's really wise, in my opinion, to disclose anything that there's that potential there as well. So it will be dealt with separately, and I believe the clerk has all that down. So with that, just getting back to that one announcement that the clerk had mentioned there. This is the very first meeting that the new system, as we refer to it, is taking place. And at the appropriate time, Councillor Best is the acting mayor for the month of January, and he'll be assuming the chair partway through the council meeting here tonight, and he will be concluding it at the end as well, and that includes all the bylaws and everything else. And the delegation, the public meeting, will be handled by the acting mayor, Councillor Best. So, and that will rotate every month. So tonight will be the first night of that new system. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Ali and seconded by Councillor Malboof. Be it resolved that consent items numbers 1 to 9 be approved. Are there any one of these items that any member of council wish pulled out and dealt with separately? Councillor Challoner?
Yes, Your Worship, ironically, item 3.
Pull out number 3, okay. I might make mention, there's a note on here, save and accept item number 3, which that's to be voted on separately. So, Councillor Chandler, go ahead. Number 3.
Thanks, Your Worship. It's a question of staff with respect to the allocation. Very specifically, there's a recommendation that $20,000 be given to United Way of Halton and Hamilton for distribution to agencies serving our community. I think that staff is aware that the policy doesn't permit us to, in fact, provide donations to organizations that themselves are grantors rather than users of the funds. I'm kind of curious as to why we're breaking with policy with respect to this matter and allocating $20,000.
Ms. Scott?
Through your worship to Councillor Challoner, staff had received direction on that through the terms of reference for the community fund allocation program, which is why that recommendation was made through that committee.
Your Worship, I will vote in favor of the recommendation when it comes forward, but you know, we really need to watch this kind of stuff. This is something that very specifically since day one we have not done, and it's a lot of money. And there are organizations that weren't receiving funds this year that certainly could use them, and I don't doubt that those organizations that are supported by the United Way can use the money as well. And I used to sit in allocation with the United Way of Milton back in the day. So I understand the need. But we have a policy.
Thank you for that. Councillor Best?
A question and clarification to staff regarding Councillor Challoner's concern. How many years have the town been doing this through the community fund to the United Way? Because I understand it's been a few years, and I just want to clarify. I can understand his position. I just want to make sure that everybody else is too.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Best, longer than I've been here, which is 3 years. So I'm going to turn to Joy, who's been here way longer than me.
Ms. Anderson, if you would come forward, please.
Respectfully, of course. Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Certainly, I can't tell you exactly how many years. It's definitely been more than 5. So previous to that, we used to actually accept applications from the social service sector. It was at the time that Council gave the direction to no longer fund organizations in this community that serve a social need, that instead Council direction was given that we could, after we had made allocation decisions as part of that meeting, we could consider a allocation to the United Way. So it's been at least 5 years.
Councillor Best.
Last question regarding, because I know you were quite involved with the CSAC, and we used to be on that board. How much is the average contribution to the United Way each year?
It would definitely be a range. I think this is much on the higher side. I think some years it's in the range of $5,000. This year it's in the range of 20, so somewhere in that range.
That's all. Thank you.
Is there anything further on 3, Councillor Challoner?
So, given that's the case and given this has been the policy for a while, then I understand the policy is being reviewed. And so let's get this straightened out.
Okay, I'm sure the staff has made a note of that, and Council may wish to change that policy in not too distant future. Anything further on 3? If not, members of Council, you heard the resolution. Those in favour? That's carried. Okay, Mr. Clerk, maybe you better explain just exactly what is going to evolve here, and this is to deal with the disclosures.
Yes, Your Worship, we did indicate that the vote on items 1 to 9 would be save and accept number 3. So we'd be looking at voting on each recommendation separately, so that the individuals who had conflicts would not vote on items they declared a conflict on.
Okay, and there's different ones there now, so how am I going to stick handle this one? Because they're all separate, they're not all encompassing.
It's a separate vote on each one of those items, starting with the allocation of $20,000 to the United Way of Halton and Hamilton. I believe Councillor Cluett had a conflict on that.
Okay, with the exception of Councillor Cluett, he has a conflict on it. Any questions on that portion? If not, those in favour. And that's carried. Mr. Clerk?
The next separate item would be the Community Fund application number 4 contained in Schedule C be approved. That deals with the Destination Campbellville Community Association.
And who has a conflict on that one?
Nobody? Okay.
So no one's got a conflict, so I would assume that that's covered in the all-encompassing motion.
It did say separate. Okay. And the next one, Your Worship, the Community Fund application number 8 contained in Schedule C be approved. That deals with the Italian Canadian Club.
Okay, and I know there was 3 or 4 individuals that had disclosures on that, so those individuals know who you are. So they backed away from the council table. Those that do not have a conflict, those in favor of that motion. And that's carried. Okay, Mr. Clerk?
And the last one, Your Worship, the Community Fund application number 14, that deals with the Curling Club.
And that's the one that Councillor Melba has the disclosure on. Any questions? If not, those in favor of that motion. And that's carried. Thank you. So that takes care of that portion of it. Mr. Clerk, is there anything further under the council agenda? This members of council will probably be the shortest part of this meeting here this evening. So if you would give us about 2 minutes, Councillor Best is going to assume the chair and assume the balance of this council meeting. So this portion of the council meeting is now adjourned.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the public meeting portion of the meeting. While we're setting up here, I just also wanted to welcome William Roberts back as our acting clerk. For those who are not aware, the Mayor, Councillor Challoner, and I served with our acting clerk a few years ago. We won't say exactly when, but I certainly appreciate your guidance here, and I understand that your staff have kept you apprised of what's been happening the last few years. Okay, this is now a public meeting portion of our agenda. The committee or council will not make any final decisions on any application tonight. Anyone would like to be informed when the final report will be going to council, or anyone wishing to speak but is not a registered delegate, please fill out the register located just inside the chamber doors over to my left here. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act for the zoning application for Orlando Corporations for land located in the Dairy Green Corporate Park, otherwise known as Staff Report PD 001-19. Is there anyone in there or any representatives of the applicant in the audience today? I see a second time. Yes, there is someone here. Okay, we just wanted to check. You'll be given an opportunity to speak. Registered delegates will be given an opportunity to speak first. And now we'll pass this on to staff to introduce the report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of council. The application we have before us this evening is a zoning bylaw amendment for Lando Corporation on James Snow Parkway. The applicant is seeking to add one additional provision to the existing site-specific provisions that were granted in 2017 as it relates to the height of the building. The zoning bylaw currently permits a maximum height of 15 meters, and the applicant is seeking a maximum height of 28 meters to facilitate the construction of an industrial warehouse distribution center. The agent for the applicant is here tonight, and she'll explain what they're seeking a little bit further. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to staff? If not, I'd like to thank the staff for presentation. This is now the public meeting portion. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this item? I had an indication there that someone from the Orlando Corporation was here to speak. Yes, would you like to come forward and state your name?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. My name is Karen Bennett, and I'm a planner with Glenn Schnarr and Associates. Just looking for my presentation. I'm here representing Orlando Corporation, the owners of the subject lands. With me tonight is a representative from Orlando Corporation as well, in case there are any questions we can maybe direct to him specifically. As the town planner noted, we're here seeking a rezoning for the subject property to increase the height provision on the property. The property is located on the east side of James Snow Parkway. Just south of the CP tracks and north of Dairy Road, it's about 60 hectares or 148 acres in size. It's currently vacant land. To the north are Hydro 1 lands. To the south and the east are existing agricultural lands, which are future industrial lands consistent with the Dairy Green Corporate Business Park secondary plan. There are existing residential uses to the west. A little bit about the history of the property. These lands were draft approved and zoned in March of 2017 to permit an industrial business industrial and business employment uses consistent with the town's official plan and the Dairy Green Corporate Business Park secondary plan. We are very pleased to advise that there is interest through a confidential competitive bid from a prospective tenant to construct and operate an industrial warehouse in this location. A height of 28 meters is required to accommodate the needs of this particular user. The current maximum height allowed on this site is 15 meters, so we're seeking an increase in height to 28 meters. The lands are designated business park area, which is orange along the frontage of James Snow Parkway, and industrial area, which is pink in the town of Milton official plan. Both of these are employment land use designations where the main permitted uses include a range of light industrial, general industrial, and office uses, subject to a high standard of design, most particularly along James Snow Parkway. In the Dairy Green secondary plan, the lands are designated business park area with a street-oriented site overlay, which is shown as orange with hatching on this slide. And they are also designated industrial area, which is the blue portion, and natural heritage system, which is the green portion along the eastern portion of the property. The proposed development of the site for an industrial warehouse conforms with the policies and permitted uses in the secondary plan. There is no proposal to change the land use permissions or the official plan policies through this application. The development proposal includes an industrial warehouse building to be developed in accordance with the official plan and the secondary plan, with a total GFA, or gross floor area, of approximately 99,745 square meters in a building consisting of ideally 28 meters in height. Also, there's associated car parking and trailer parking and loading. Access to the site is proposed from the west, from a new municipal roadway located opposite Trudeau Drive, and from the east from a new municipal collector roadway off of 5th Line in the southeast portion of the site. Both of these access points were previously approved through the March 2017 approvals related to this property. As well, there's going to be stormwater management and greenland channel uses, which will continue to be proposed along the eastern limit of the property, consistent with the 2017 approvals. The intent of the business park area and industrial area land use designations in Dairy Green is to develop lands for highly connected and well-planned employment uses with a strong urban design focus. Through detailed design, the proposed development will achieve a high standard of building and site design consistent with the objectives and policies in the official plan, the secondary plan, and in the Dairy Green urban design guidelines. The design will encompass unique architectural treatments, including corner treatments, window glazing of the proposed building to address the street front and draw the connection between the site, James Snow Parkway, the residential to the west, and the municipal road off of James Snow Parkway. The design will also include high-quality landscaping berming to screen parking areas and to create a pedestrian-oriented green space to enhance James Snow Parkway. This is all required through the secondary plan and the urban design guidelines, and will be dealt with closely working with town staff through detailed design. We've undertaken a number of studies in connection with this proposal to rationalize and justify the increase in height that we're seeking. I can go into detail on those if there are any questions later. There's a planning justification report, urban design brief, and shadow study. All three of those studies had their basis on the March 2017 approvals that were already provided by town staff, but elaborated in the context of the application before you today. The current zoning for the property is a mix of M1 and M2 site-specific zoning. You'll notice there's a holding provision, the letter H, along the properties that front on James Snow Parkway. That holding provision relates to achieving that high level of berming, landscaping, and urban design along James Snow Parkway. We're seeking only to amend the height provision for both the M1 and M2 zones, given that our building straddles those two zones, to allow, again, for a maximum of 28 meters of height, whereas 15 meters is currently permitted. In closing, the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement. It conforms to the policies of the growth plan and the region of Halton official plan. It implements the vision set out in the town of Milton official plan and the secondary plan for the business park area, and the Dairy Green urban design guidelines. The proposal will maximize the use of underutilized land in an area identified for employment and industrial development within the secondary plan area. It will contribute to creating a vibrant and complete business community in Milton, and through detailed design, it will achieve enhanced berming, landscaping, and urban design objectives and policies set out in the official plan, the secondary plan, and the urban design guidelines. We're excited to hear your comments, and if there are any questions, we'll try to answer them tonight, or we'll commit to getting back to you.
Thank you for your presentation. We have a couple of councillors asking questions. Councillor Cluett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your presentation, and welcome here tonight. Asking about the increase in height, does that create any kind of increase in, I guess, the activity, and more along what I am concerned about is traffic? If that will be an increase in traffic, and if so, will that be reflected in any of your studies that you'll be preparing for staff?
The use itself is consistent with the official plan and the secondary plan in the context of being an industrial warehouse and a distribution center. A traffic impact study was completed in connection with the previous approvals for the property. We don't anticipate an increase in traffic in accordance with our seeking of an increase in height. I think the activity levels are generally related to the use, which is industrial warehouse and distribution.
Councillor Challoner.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Through you, two questions. The first thing is, and it relates to the question that Councillor Cluett asked, and I guess the question is, what is the anticipated interior use of the building that you would require 28 meters height versus 15?
I don't have the details of the operations inside the building. And again, the client is confidential at the moment. I'm not at liberty to reveal, but it's an industrial warehouse and distribution center inside of that structure.
Okay. My second question is around the construction of this type of building elsewhere in Halton or elsewhere in the GTA. Is there currently a building of that height that Orlando has constructed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Di Lorenzo.
My first question you partially already answered. During the presentation, I mentioned that the client is a confidential client, and I didn't want you to break any confidentiality, of course, but I was just curious if there's any comments you can make on why is there a need to have a confidential client on this application without breaking any confidentiality.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I think you already answered during the presentation saying it's a confidential client. I was going to ask if it was something you could say, or if it was just in the report you said it, because I noticed during the presentation it said confidential client.
Yeah,
but you already said during the presentation to John Chandler's question, it's a confidential client, so you can't disclose who it is?
It is. It's a prospective tenant, and there's a competitive bid, and our client is Orlando, who owns the property, and this would be a tenant leasing the property if we're successful in this rezoning.
One question through the chair. On the north side of the property, on figure 2, are those, is that like truck offloading, unloading, or what is that portion? It was in the presentation, and it's in our deck, figure 2, page 68. It's kind of a yellow, and then it has, are those trucks, or is that something else? I see like when I zoom in, I see a guard something.
That's part of the roadway that runs north of the site. I think those are trucks. That's part of the ring road around the northern part of the property for site circulation of the vehicles, for sure.
So it says like, okay, are those things there supposed to mean like a lineup of trucks, or what is that? I don't understand what those is there.
To my knowledge, it's part of the ring road. It's showing truck traffic on the ring road.
Okay. Probably stacking. Thank you. I'll have more questions during the technical report, which I assume will answer questions about traffic and other things that we usually have in a technical report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Tester-Dirksen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question with respect to the shadow study. I'm trying to visualize, because it is a significant increase in the height, particularly the residences that are kind of close to the fire station there, along James Snow and just north of Waldy Avenue. Did the shadow study anticipate that there could be an interference with the residents' exposure to sunlight in the morning or afternoon?
Actually, I took a keen interest in the shadow study, anticipating this kind of question. And so the purpose of the shadow study, it's a series of images that are taken at different times of the year and different times of the day. The worst of the worst is December, sort of mid to late afternoon, if you can anticipate. And with the sun setting in the west, those shadows are actually heading east of the building. So when I looked at the shadow study and I flipped through the different times of year and times of day, I didn't see any impact on the residential to the west at all. But I could share that with you if you'd like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there any further questions of the delegation? Councillor Challoner.
Chairman, I guess one is a recommendation, and the second thing is a question. So my recommendation would be, as part of the next phase of this, to share with council and staff what might be a typical use of this building that would require that height. Obviously, it doesn't have to be an answer that compromises the confidentiality of the matter, but it might be very helpful to everybody if there was some indication as to why somebody would require that height. The second thing is, would you and your client be agreeable to having staff go into a non-disclosure agreement to share with them the details, because it might be difficult for staff and for ourselves to just sort of take a flyer on this without some sort of reasonable explanation as to what the need is based on.
Thank you. We can consider that.
Anything further, Councillor Challoner? If not, any other councillor questions of the delegation? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to this item? This is the Orlando Corporation. Okay, seeing no one in the audience indicating. Councillor De Lorenzo, you mentioned you had some comments.
I guess just during the technical report, when this comes before council, I would like to make sure the technical report covers just the implications to the traffic, to the nearby residential homes. I know Dairy Green is a business park, and a lot of us are hung up on the premium office space that's going to be there. But we understand as well there has to be some warehousing and distribution, which is part of the Dairy Good Business Park, and those warehouse and distributions have available property taxes for the town, but this is right next door to the residential side on the east. So I'm just looking forward to that future technical report and making sure it covers all of the potential impacts to the residential area that's right to the west of this.
Thank you. Any other councillors, any comments? If not, I have a motion here, moved by Councillor Ali, seconded by Councillor Malbuf. Be it resolved that Planning and Development Report PD 001-19 be received for information, and that upon completion of the review and evaluation of the application, a technical report be brought forward by the Planning and Development Department for consideration. Are any questions to the motion? If not, all those in favour? Opposed? Being none, we'll call this part of the meeting closed. Yeah, our second public meeting tonight. This is the General Housekeeping Amendments, the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw, otherwise known as Staff Report PD 005. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. If there is anyone other than a representative of the applicant, which is the town in this case, in the audience who would like to speak to this matter, please raise your hand. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this item? Gentleman at the back there, you'll be given an opportunity to speak. Registered delegates will be given the first opportunity to speak first. Do staff wish to make a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council, staff, and public. Staff has initiated some housekeeping amendments to both the urban and rural zoning bylaws that are intended to improve, clarify, and strengthen existing regulations within the bylaws. Many of the proposed amendments are minor text changes or the deletion of provisions that are no longer in effect. Some of the more notable changes which were set out in the report included a series of new definitions being introduced because a number of uses are permitted in the zoning bylaw but are not defined. Revisions to the day nursery and home daycare definitions have been proposed to reflect new legislation. Dog daycare provisions and permissions have been introduced given the surge of interest in the establishment of these uses. Some clarification has been provided with respect to parking on individual residential driveways as well as accessible parking requirements. And there's a series of site-specific changes that have been proposed to implement approved council bylaws, OMB decisions, and omitted text. As you've mentioned before, there's no decisions to be made today, and we're welcoming any questions.
Is there any questions of staff? Councillor Clowett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'll bring up the dog daycares. I know Councillor Best and myself have been had some discussions with a number of individuals over the last few years as to dog daycares and providing this type of service. I'm glad that we're going to get some clear language on that going forward. Regarding the day nurseries and the home daycares, it mentions the Child Care and Early Years Act of 2014. The provincial government has put forward Bill 66, which includes, as part of its omnibus bill, a number of changes to the Daycare Act and other pieces of legislation. Are these reflected in those, or do you have any comment of any potential snafus that we might have going forward?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, staff will continue to monitor Bill 66 as it works its way through the system. However, as it has not been brought into force and effect yet, it would be premature to amend our bylaw accordingly. We do monitor legislation on a regular basis to ensure currency of our bylaws.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions of staff? If not, thank you for your presentation. We do have one person that wishes to speak. If you want to come forward, sir, and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Going to have to bear with me. I haven't done public speaking since elementary school. So just wanted to say on the doggy daycare thing, what's going on? Come on. What's wrong with it? I don't know how to do this whole stuff, so if I'm out of line or anything, let me know, but what's wrong with the doggy daycare? Just make sure that my little guy doesn't rip up my house all day. Wasn't really sure if that's what I'm supposed to do, but I just wanted to voice my opinion, so.
Sir, the clerk asked if we have your name and address, please.
Oh, John Grant, 25 Lawrence Scott, Milton.
Thank you. Any questions of the delegation? Councillor Del Renzo.
Sorry, I apologize. I wasn't sure what your concern was with the doggy daycare portion of the...
Apparently it's not going to be around anymore. They're going to change the bylaw or something. Was I misunderstood on that? going forward.
Could we have a clarification from the Planning Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the intent of the bylaw is to actually allow doggy daycares as of right in certain zones, whereas they're not clearly permitted right now. So it will broaden the permissions.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lorenzo, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Any other questions of Councillor? Just in case, is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? Oh, ma'am, if you'd like to come forward and introduce yourself, your name and address, please.
Oh, thank you. Letitia Justino, 164 Main Street East. I currently own a doggy daycare in Milton, and my argument would be that the building I currently occupy allows veterinary clinics for small and large animals, and we do not do overnight boarding. We only have dogs from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., so that's my stance on that, and that's my question as to why they would not allow a minor variance, as we've applied for one and have been denied previously.
Possibly planning staff could clarify that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly we can look at the specific through our continued review of the housekeeping amendment prior to bringing forward a technical report to Council. With respect to minor variance applications in accordance with the Planning Act, all applications must meet the 4 tests set out in the Planning Act. That is, the application must be minor in nature, consistent with the zoning bylaw and the official plan, and appropriate for the general development of the land. If the application is not clearly falls within those parameters, it is necessarily refused. So I don't know the specifics of this application. However, those are the 4 tests that it would have had to have met, and presumably if it did not meet one of those tests, it would have failed.
Thank you.
Is there any questions to the delegation? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Just to make sure everyone can hear, is anyone else that wishes to speak to this item? If not, I'll pass on to councillors. Is there any questions of staff or comments? If not, I'll read out the motion. It's moved by Councillor Ali and seconded by Councillor Malvo. Be it resolved that Planning and Development Report PD 005-19 outline the town-initiated housekeeping amendments to the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 016-2014 as amended, and the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 144-2003 as amended be received for information. Any questions of this motion? All those in favour? Opposed? Motion's carried. If there is any questions about the report or information on the appeal process, it should be directed to the planning staff. I declare the public meeting now closed. Thank you, everyone. Now we're getting on to the presentations. I understand Mr. Siltala would like to introduce the, our delegation for the Milton Education Village.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to introduce Report ES 001-19. The report's pretty self-explanatory, but 3 main points is that it speaks to our strong MOU that we have with Laurier for the next 3 years, the importance of Laurier to the growing knowledge-based economy in Milton, and 3, our commitment to working with Laurier and the other partners to get this done and have success for Milton. I know everybody's looking forward to hearing from Laurier, and to that end, I'll introduce Deb Duvanoski, Vice President, Administration and Finance from Laurier, and she'll tell you the good story.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To members of council, some of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting. I look forward to an opportunity to have some one-on-one time with you. And I did want to, of course, extend my congratulations to each of you for your election and re-election for some of you. Tonight is a wonderful opportunity for Laurier to once again be in the chamber to celebrate the 4th extension of our Memorandum of Understanding, which is, of course, a testament, if nothing else, to our perseverance. I'm joined this evening by Ms. Ulrika Gross, who is the Assistant Vice President of Facilities and Asset Management for Laurier and a key partner and cheerleader for this project. And I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. John Tibbetts and Dr. Barbara Kelly from Conestoga College, who are here this evening, which is wonderful. We have a very, very strong partnership. So the purpose of the report that's in your package, it was in fact to pave the way for the extension of the Memorandum of Understanding, and really is a testament to our continued interest to bring post-secondary education to Milton and Halton region as a very underserviced area. Wanted to take just a brief couple of moments, if I may, Mr. Chair, to tell you a little bit about what we have been up to and what our plan is on a go-forward basis. We are proceeding in 2 phases to approach and to tackle bringing the university and college here to Milton. So I'll start with the October 23rd announcement. And I would like to acknowledge that Parm Gill's office, Mr. Robert Thompson, is here this evening, which means I have to be on better behavior than I otherwise would have for those of you who've seen me in this chamber in the past. So you'll know October 23rd, the government announced the withdrawal of capital funding for 3 campuses, including Laurier's expansion to Milton, with the cancellation of the Francophone University following shortly thereafter. You will recall that the previous Liberal government had made a capital allocation of $90 million, which would have been complemented by the university contributing additional funds from our own source revenue and from fundraising. The government announcement was disappointing. It did, however, leave the door open for further discussion and for the submission of a business case, the details of which have not yet been shared with the university. The government reinforced that this was a fiscal decision and was not any indication of their lack of support for the university expanding into this area. So Laurier's priorities remain the same. You will know that we are a multi-campus university with campuses in Waterloo and Brantford, and have a very successful foundation with Conestoga College in particular at our Brantford campus, which really paves the way for us on a go-forward basis. Our goal for Milton, members of council who have served in the past will know, of primary importance to Laurier is to introduce engineering to the complement of programs that Laurier offers, and that STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics would still be the focus for our campus. And of course, the #1 priority for the university is to honor the commitment that we've made to the residents and businesses in Milton and Halton region, and that is, as Mr. Sitla said, to expand and do what we can to help drive the local economy. So given that it is a brave new world that is yet a little bit undefined, God bless, we are starting to break the project down into 2 phases. You'll know that for many years, Laurier has been a founding partner at the Milton Innovation Center on Industrial Drive, and it is our intention to make use of that facility along with our partner Conestoga College to take advantage of the space that we have, the classroom that we have, and to bring a mix of degree and non-degree programs to Milton. Now, there is, of course, always a but, and that is the timing. So we are currently reviewing what we can do amongst deans and faculty, and of course in discussion with Conestoga College, to see what we can do in fall 2019 or winter 2020. I should tell you that Despite appearances, universities are not autonomous institutions, and we do require provincial approval in order to deliver programs. So there's a few bells and whistles that will need to be satisfied as we proceed. So that's for phase one, and so work continues, and our Board of Governors has allocated resources to enable us to proceed. The second phase of our project is the development of the MEV lands, which of course will require the development of a campus master plan, including consolidation of our partnerships, building design, fundraising, external relations plan, and so on. The university has hired a very renowned architect, Diamond & Schmidt, who is working with us, with the town, with other key partners on how the various elements of a plan would come together. So not simply the gift of the 50 acres to Laurier, but how would that integrate with the remaining acreage at the Education Village, and what is the best thing that we can do to meet Council's objectives. We will be at a point not yet determined, submitting a business case to the province, which would entail providing a description of the academic plan, the number of students, the scale up, and so on. And we, again, have reason to be optimistic, particularly as successive years go by, that the fortunes of the province will change and money will be available. I should tell you that the tuition announcement of last week does have an impact on the university's revenues overall, and those things are things that we need to take into consideration. But it really, most importantly for this council, reinforces the need and interest and value for Laurier to be expanding to Milton and to diversify and to really, again, make sure that we're bringing high quality education to Milton. So the excitement continues despite setbacks, and some of us are getting pretty good at understanding and bouncing back. I must say, the day of the announcement, Your Worship, I did appreciate your wise counsel and reminding me that it's a very long road, so thank you, sir, for that. I can tell you that our board, faculty, Senate, Conestoga, our partners all remain steadfast in solving the riddle of getting this campus built. And we certainly appreciate the town and your forbearance as you continue to work through us. And I do appreciate your consideration and approval of the extension of the Memorandum of Understanding. It sends an exceedingly strong message to the province that, that Laurier and the town are in this for the long haul. So thank you. And in the interest of time, I would be able to take a few questions, Mr. Chairman, if that would be at your pleasure.
I have a few of them already. Councillor Claude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome again, and welcome back.
Thank you.
I guess we can set aside the rumors of the demise of Milton Education Village and Laurier have been greatly exaggerated. I can remember back in that October day, we can be a little bit more lenient with our description. It was extreme disappointment at the provincial government's decision as to putting a pause, and I'll use their words, pause in the funding for this. But I'm glad to see that we, and I wanted the community to see this as a good news story that we're continuing on. We're continuing on with our support for the Milton Education Village, for Laurier University in this campus development, and working forward with you to make sure that it gets done. And I'm glad to see that you're here and excited. I know that curveballs are being thrown from all different directions. You answered my question about the most recent tuition announcement and how that might have affected. One of the questions I always ask you, and hopefully you'll be able to give me another great answer, and hopefully the media is listening, is what else can members of council or this community do to show its support for going forward for the Milton Education Village?
You'd almost think we'd teed that up, Councillor Cluett, through you, Mr. Chair. What I would suggest is, as we get a little bit closer to the submission of the business case, I think that it will be very important for the town, for the region, for the business community, for interested partners to really be able to demonstrate that support as we build the business case and really demonstrate the value of what it is we're doing. I do take the province at its word that this was a fiscal decision, and I think that we have such an extraordinary story to tell. I'm quite confident that the Premier and members of caucus will see the wisdom of providing support to us.
Thank you very much. And again, I just want to reiterate what's in our report and what we've said many, many times before. I think around this table, there's total unanimous support moving forward with Laurier and the Milton Education Village, and whatever we can do to help you, just ask. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Krantz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Deb, thanks very much for being present here. I do have a question, Mr. Chairman, but I also have a couple of comments as well. First of all, I want to thank and acknowledge Laurier and, of course, Conestoga as well for being steadfast partners with us here in Milton on these trying times. I made a presentation today to the Minister of Finance, and right at the top of that list, and the CEO and I were both present there, and he can attest to this, right at the outset, I said to the Minister I was very disappointed on that announcement back in October. But more particularly, I wanted them to get on with the funding, and I made a professional, at least in my opinion, presentation, and that was one of the areas. So they heard me loud and clear, and I, like you, I'm not going away, and they're well aware of that. And you acknowledged your, or at least my MPP, his assistance in the audience here tonight. He's heard me loud and clear too. I'm disappointed. But I guess the question is, and I heard you say there about the business case. I'm not sure who you and Laurie are making that business case to, but the question is, has there been any presentation to the Minister of Finance like I did today? And I was, by the way, invited to make that presentation today as well, because I think that's the individual, Mr. Chairman, that has a hold of the purse strings. It's maybe great to make that business case with some of the bureaucracy. There's nothing wrong with that. I encourage that. But it's the people that make the decisions, like the elected people like me. So what about that part and getting on with it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you raise a number of good points, Your Worship, as you always do. This will come down, I think, to the civil service being able to say with confidence to the elected officials that there is a sound business case, that there are students, that it is a partnership that is quite extraordinary when you look at the value proposition of Laurier and Conestoga. If you think about that, we're going to want the civil servants to be able to say that. As far as the elected officials, it's a bit murky at the moment exactly what the route to success will be, because the province is, of course, devoting its attention to tackling its structural deficit. So at the time when they signal we can come forward, we will. But nevertheless, we will make investments, Conestoga will make investments, our partners will make investments, and we will start as soon as we can later this year, winter 2020, to start to educate individuals in this town so that we can be demonstrating that we are here for the long run, as you said, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to acknowledge Laurier's presence at 55 Industrial Drive. And like I said right at the outset there, we're not going away. Laurier's not going away. They're already here, and it's here to grow with the community. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering aloud, and I'll be guided by your thoughts and sentiment, or at least the majority of councils. I'd like to hear from Conestoga, if it's appropriate, after Ms. Duwanowski is finished here, and their commitment to this, because I think loud and clear the province has to hear that we're in this, not only with a college, or not only with a university, but a college. And I don't know how many other places in the province that there's been that working relationship. To the best of my knowledge, very few and far between. So I'd just like to have him, make his pitch as well, because this is live, and hopefully the province is listening, that we are not going away, so get on with it. Thank you.
Yeah, at the appropriate time, I'll have you make that motion. Staff already said that there should be no problem getting 2/3 majority. Councillor Challoner.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the delegation. You mentioned a business plan. Was there a business plan presented with the original proposal to the Government of Ontario, the last Government of Ontario?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, yes, there was. There was a detailed financial plan, an academic plan, the number of students, a scale-up, partnerships, employment prospects, construction impacts, transportation impacts. It was a quite extensive plan that was submitted.
Well, just a comment, I think it's probably still relevant then, isn't it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the plan is relevant, and I think that as we proceed, it simply gets better and gets refined to reflect the needs of council and the needs of the community.
Okay. Just, if I might, Mr. Chairman, there's been a little bit of back and forth about outreach to the government, and I think that the mayor had some wise counsel once again, and I would, my wise counsel to you, having been involved in large infrastructure projects in the province of Ontario, don't wait for an invitation from Queen's Park. Get on the phone and say, guys, it's time for a meeting. I mean, they're not going to call you. And my advice would be, if you need to take the mayor with you, if you need to take the president of Conestoga College or whoever else, have that initial meeting and find out, from them what they think they need from you to move in the right direction. Often, the challenge is one of, until you understand, what their issues are intimately, it's really hard to put together a plan that will be of value to them. I don't doubt you have a great plan, but I would pick up the phone as soon as you get the opportunity.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Councillor, we haven't had an opportunity to work together. Shy is not something normally attributed to me, but I do take your point, and we have made many overtures and are simply looking for the province to give the guidance that it promised at the time of the cancellation announcement. They indicated that they would, in fact, provide us with more details. There are a number of things that impact the business case going forward in terms of the number of students, whether that would be positively or negatively received, because of course it does impact provincial expenditure. So there's a whole number of points that need to be considered, but again, we are requesting meetings regularly, I can assure you, but I would welcome and take your guidance, and your point is very well taken. Thank you.
We're in a good position, Mr. Chairman, as you know, where we have sitting members from the government side, both in Kitchener, Waterloo, and here, and that's a good place to start.
Good point. Councillor Malvo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You all know I don't share the same enthusiasm as most of you do concerning this university. I've said it for years, it wasn't going to happen. So my question to you is, because the province has made it quite clear where they stand on these 4 universities, and I can't see, and maybe you can enlighten me, I can't see them changing their position on one of them and not on the other 3. So they'd have to look at all 4. And with the financial position we're in now, I can't see them doing it. So my question to you is, is your plan, if we, I'm sure this extension's going to go through tonight, so is your plan for a university campus here reliant on that $90 million or funding from the province, or do you have a plan B should the province hold steady on their position and not back down?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I understand the reservations that you're expressing, Councillor, and certainly share those. I can tell you that our commitment to start teaching in fall 2019 and winter of 2020 is not with any provincial investment. Those are our own source dollars that we would be doing so, with the exception, of course, of the grants that, as of today, are still in place. We'll see, relative to the provincial budget, whether those remain. So the fact that there was a capital investment from the previous government is interesting, but is really not relevant, as you're saying, in today's environment. And so Laurier is working with a number of business partners who are interested in partnering with us. And our goal is to honor the commitment that we've made to the town. We are looking at private sector investors. We're looking at how to do a research park and investment, and there is a tremendous interest. At the risk of sounding sycophantic, Milton is the place to be in the Greater Toronto Area, and the Milton Education Village is seen as a gem by which businesses who understand the benefit of a university seek to partner with us, and many of those partnerships have come to us from the town's own economic development initiatives. So I know that you would have preferred a succinct answer, Councillor. I'm a former municipal CIO. I think I've mentioned that on occasion. So we're doing the best we can. Our resources are, of course, finite, but hoping that by tapping into the private sector, we'll be able to continue moving the ball down the field.
Okay, Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. I just wanted to thank you for your kind words and congratulating me, and thank you for coming out today. I just want to let you know that I share the same enthusiasm my colleagues have with the Laurier project, and since the ME, we will be in the Ward 4 community of Milton. I just want to let you know that I will be very happy if we can just cross this road bump and get to where we want to be and provide a much needed service to Milton, which just coming out of election, I've heard at every single door that we do need a post-secondary education facility in our town. So I just wanted to let you know that I support 100%, and thank you for your kind words.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Krantz has made a motion to waive the rules to allow a representative of Conestoga College. Do we have a seconder? So take your pick. Councillor Challoner. And all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimous. Do we have a representative from Conestoga College who can come forward and introduce themselves?
My name is John Tibbetts. I'm the president of Conestoga College. I just dropped in this evening. I didn't know about this until Friday, but... I recognize John, that's why I got him up here. Okay. This is a complicated situation. We certainly would like to be in Milton. There's no question about that, and we'd like to be in a partnership with Laurier. But we didn't come with prepared remarks. I think it's not going to be that simple to get money from the government. I think also we have to look, I like what, sorry, I don't remember your name, sorry. Yes, Dr. Ali. I think when you said post-secondary institution, I said what we have in Brantford with Laurier is a full partnership. We're separate, equal, and complementary. I think we would like to certainly be part of that business plan with Laurier. That would be interesting to be part of that plan, but I think we need to submit a plan that the government is interested in. And I think the government is interested in the full range of post-secondary, including trades, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would be a good tact. I'm not sure that Laurie wants to hear that, but the world has changed, and this government has different priorities, and we are going to make every effort to be here, and we like to be here. But we come with strengths, and we like to be able to bring those strengths, and we like to be able to be here in a situation where we're an equal partner, not just a minor partner. So may not be popular, but I think we have a better chance to go ahead if we look at the priorities of this project. Thank you.
Mayor Krantz, you can't get away.
Mr. Chairman, just before the President gets away there, I'm well aware of the work that Conestoga does with private enterprise, and I'm well aware that some of that is already happening in Milton. Yes. So maybe if John could be so kind as to share with us some of their involvement with private enterprise. And I'm thinking, just to illustrate, with the automotive industry, which is fairly large, not only here in Milton, but in Halton and in this particular part of the country.
Well, can I go back to, like, we are in, Kitchener-Waterloo, Brantford, Cambridge. Certainly we have a major partnership with Toyota. We are the only organization that has our logo on their training building. Every single employee that comes in, every single skilled tradesperson comes through the college first. They're assessed, etc. So that's a major partnership with Linamar, with CarMax, Magna, and they have 5 operations around here, not just CarMax, but Magna. We met with them recently. They'd be very interested in working with us to develop an industrial skills training facility. That's not a university facility, it's a different facility. Certainly Mattamy Homes, we are big in construction trades, but we also are big in engineering. We have an engineering school ourselves, and that's, accredited engineering. We're the only college, in fact, in Canada to have it accredited in engineering. So I think we need to look at this. We need to look at this in a way, how can we come here? And I think if there's an opening, and I think we'd like to be a key player in the development of the plan. I think it should be more than just a university plan. It should be a post-secondary plan. I think if you look at that, I think you have a much better chance to be successful personally.
Thank you. Anything further, Mayor Krantz?
Okay.
Any other
Now, I'm going to be very unpopular at Laurier right now, so I think we have to speak the truth here. The truth is that we, in this day and age, we cannot just educate the upper quartile. We have to educate the full range. And if you look at artificial intelligence, robotics, when I talked to, and he's going to be on our board very soon, Ray Tanguay, the former president of Toyota, they need to retrain the whole automotive. There's 600,000 people in automotive and parts, automotive parts. They cannot keep up. They need, enhanced skills. If we're going to be competitive, it's not just people coming out of high school. It's going to be the existing workforce. We got a long road, hard road for Canada to be really competitive in this day and age. And I think these two institutions working together can bring a lot of strength for you and do something really great. And I think if we do that, I think the government might be more open than if it's just focused on a university campus. Is that fine?
Thank you for your presentation. Any other questions? If not, Councillor Melba, if you had some comments.
Yeah. As you know, Mr. Chair, I've been asking for a Plan B surrounding these lands for quite a while because I do not share the same confidence that this campus would ever come about. And this provincial government's recent position and announcements just confirmed my concerns were valid. And so I was looking for our Plan B, but it seems that our Plan B is to continue with Plan A, a plan that has cost us over the last 10 years millions of dollars in lost tax revenues and development charges. We have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in increasing our transit so that it would be ready for this university campus. We agreed to accept the velodrome because it was going to be the centerpiece of that education village. We now have a velodrome that's costing taxpayers, Milton taxpayers, almost $400,000 a year to operate. And it's sitting in an empty field. So again, and I recall council saying that this velodrome would guarantee us a campus. Well, we have the velodrome but no campus. So my position basically is that Plan A is dead. And I think yet here we have a report suggesting that we continue down the same path, and that to me doesn't make sense. I believe it's time that we accept the fact that there will be no campus in Milton for at least 10 years, if ever. And so I believe it is time that we move on. And So what I would ask staff to look at alternatives, not just sit back for another 3, 4, 5 years in hopes that something will change, because I can't see this government changing anything, and I can't see a changing government for at least 2 terms. So that's my concern. Again, you know, we're going to be sitting on empty lands that could generate revenues for this town, and we're scrimping with a budget to try to find $1 million, and we're sitting on 50 acres that's worth at least $50 million. So that's my position on this. So again, I'd like to see a plan B. I'd like to see staff start working on it.
Any other speakers to this item? Being none, we do have a motion moved by Councillor Ali and seconded by Councillor Malboof that be it resolved that ES 001-19 be received for information. Any questions to this motion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we now move on to items in consideration. The first item is Staff Report Cores 001-19, the appointments of council members to boards and committees. Mr. Clerk, how would you like to handle this?
I think delicately, Your Worship. Just briefly highlight the report for members of council. We do have Dr. Carley that wanted to speak to the Grand River Conservation Authority appointment. So we should hear from him. If you wanted to hear from him first, then we could discuss the remainder of the recommendations regarding the appointments.
Okay, I believe you're correct. Mr. Carley, if you'd like to come forward and make a presentation here, my apologies. Delegations here usually considered before we discuss the business, so if you'd like to come forward and state your name and address.
Robert Carley, 2737 30side Road, Campbellville, Ontario. I do have prepared copies of my speaking notes. Would it be appropriate if I hand them out?
Yes, it is, and a copy to the clerk, please. Okay, I'd like to begin, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Acting Mayor, Councillors. I just have to preface this by saying that this just was something I prepared over last night and part of today. I noticed on the agenda tonight was the appointments to various boards and representatives from Milton Council to be on those boards. And I just wanted to present a proposal, a possibility, in terms of the Grand River Conservation Authority, because I know one of the members of the Milton Council is appointed to that board. I have 4 basic points to make, well, 4 sections of my brief presentation. Speak a little bit about myself, and then about what my request is, what the issues that North Halton is facing in terms of the watershed, and then lastly, what the benefits could be to the residents and to the town of Milton of having a community representative on the GRC representing the town of Milton and the region of Halton. Another preface is that I have no standing on any formal board related to GRCA. I'm simply a resident of North Halton. I've lived there for over 40 years. I've been a resident of Halton for 60 plus years. We live on a small farm. We have a 163-year-old hand-dug well. This supplies our house and in the past supplied our farming activities. I am simply interested in rural water-related issues, and I don't think you can open a newspaper or a website these days without hearing something about water issues surrounding the quality of the water or the quantity of the water, who has access to water, who should pay for water, etc. And my goal in just speaking tonight is to perhaps briefly deal with some of those issues. So what I'm asking for is consideration being given to the town of Milton appointing a citizen representative to the Grand River Conservation Authority. The reason I'm asking this is that I believe that if we get a qualified, knowledgeable person, knowledgeable about rural water issues, who lives in the Grand River watershed, then that person could present issues to the GRCA and then bring them back to the region of Halton. I'm not sure about all the mechanics of what the current situation is, but I would like to see the council consider an open call of interest for people who may want to represent Milton on the Grand River Conservation Authority. Some of the issues that I see, and I just came up with 6 here, and these are issues related to the north part of Milton. The Grand River watershed only touches the very northwest corner of Halton. So it may be something that's not that crucial or that foremost in everybody's minds within the urban area of Milton or in Oakville or Burlington. But for us who live in the watershed, who depend on clean water from the Paris Gulf moraine, it's certainly in the forefront of our thoughts. So there are 6 basic issues. 1, drinking water quality and quantity affecting rural wells, and any risks to the Paris Gulf moraine of industrial and agricultural activity, factories and farms, etc. 2, the issue of commercial water taking. And I know there are large corporations who are engaged in commercial water taking these days, and of course there are pros and cons regarding that, regarding what the provincial government should be regulating, what they should be controlling, etc. 3, I think we have to look at the effect of current and potential quarry activities upon the Grand River watershed. I think most council members here are aware of the quarry up near Rockwood that could have a potential effect upon the moraine and upon the aquifer. 4th issue would be that I've heard about is unregulated dumping of fill, leading to destruction of wetlands necessary for water filtration. We need wetlands because that purifies our water as it filters down into the aquifer. 5th issue is the contamination of municipal wells, and I understand Halton has an agreement with the City of Guelph. There are a number of City of Guelph test wells up in our area, and with any contamination of the watershed, that could eventually get into the City of Guelph water system. And lastly, Bill 66, provincial government policy initiatives and what effect that may have upon water quality in the Greenbelt. Briefly, why would you appoint a citizen representative? And this will be a representative who would replace a Milton councillor. I should have said that at the very beginning. It would give to watershed residents more of a voice, input into watershed issues, more of a feeling of ownership of watershed issues and activities, easier access to information on GRCA activities, simply because the person would be a resident of that area, an increased feeling of involvement in the town of Milton. I guess sometimes we rural residents don't always think of the town of Milton that much. We have, we're sort of isolated up toward the top, and perhaps that would help to increase their citizen involvement. And perhaps would bring about some lesson activity over the future of home wells. I know that's my personal concern, is our hand-dug well. It served us well for 40+ years, and I'd like to keep it going for another 40 years. I see 2 potential benefits to the town of Milton. Milton is an expanding growth center. By appointing a citizen representative to the GRCA, that would free up one councillor or part of a councillor's responsibilities to focus more on core growth issues. Second, a citizen appointment could provide more of a dedicated, distinct focus. This would be not just part of somebody's job responsibilities. This would become their primary job. So in brief, I'm just trying to point out some of the benefits of having a citizen representative to the GRCA representing the town of Milton and the region of Halton. So thank you for the time and for listening to me.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Is there any questions to the delegation? Being none, sir, thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll be considering that. I'll hand it back to the clerk to make his presentation on how we're going to handle this, because it's not often we have to elect among ourselves.
Your Worship, or Acting Mayor. Every 4 years, Council deals with appointments of representatives to various boards and committees. We have recommendations for all committees before you from the names received. We need to vote on nominations received for 3 committees. There's a process you'll see, Mr. Chairman, in Appendix B, where the chair will ask if any candidates would like to withdraw from consideration. We do have a councillor whose name has been put forward for the Grand River Conservation Authority. So if after that discussion takes place, we would then proceed in accordance with the process. If the member continues to stand for that position, we would vote, and that would resolve the issue. If there's a change, we can do that after. So, Mr. Chairman, if you'd just like to go through the process there, if there's any candidates who want to withdraw, and then 2, 3, 4, and we'll deal with the vote by ballot when we get to later on here.
Okay, just on this, is there any questions to staff regarding the warrant? Mayor Krantz?
Just, Mr. Chairman, from what I can gather here, items numbers 1 to 9, assuming that no one withdraws, I think it would be an all-encompassing motion. But I have one question on number 6 there. I think, and I stand corrected on this, the terms of reference for the Mattamy National Cycling Center, 2 individuals should be on there, and I know Councillor Malboof has put his name forward, but there should be another one, and I would indicate if no one else is interested. I was on it last term with Councillor Di Lorenzo and I. So if no one else is interested in it, there should be 2 individuals. I'm prepared to put my name back in there, and I know I'm an ex officio on it anyway, but just to be very clear that there would be 2 council appointees to that committee.
Regarding that item 9, any councillors interested in this position? If not, Mayor Krantz has indicated his interest as well, and just clarification of staff.
6.
6, yes, I'm reversing myself here.
Yeah.
Just to staff, just a clarification, this is 2 positions for this, because I remember Mayor Krantz that there was 2 positions
I definitely
previously.
know that for sure.
The mayor's been here longer than me, Your Worship, so I'll take his word for it.
Okay, I get a clarification. Staff will clarify that since no one else wants the job, but you can be on as well and enjoy yourself. Going back to the other positions 1 through 9, is there any councillors that wish to withdraw from any of these committees? If not, we go to the next 3 items, and we have votes for items 10, 11, and 12. Mr. Clerk, if you want to hand out the ballots, we can start the process.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. So the first item we'll be voting for is the, I remember myself, the Halton Milton Hydro Board of Directors. We're voting for 2 individuals. 3 people have put their names forward. The 3 names put forward were Mayor Krantz, Councillor Malboof, and Councillor Best. As I said, you're entitled to vote for up to 2 individuals for the first ballot. And it does require a majority to be elected, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman? Just before we get that, I'm just trying to follow the bouncing ball here in the script, where it suggests the acting mayor will ask each board member if he or she wishes to make a brief comment on their candidacy.
You're catching me up here. Are you actually campaigning on this one?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, limit you to 2 minutes then.
I don't need 2 minutes, Mr. Chairman, but thank you. And again, to the best of my knowledge, Milton is the only community, to the best of my knowledge, that's not got the mayor on the committee there. So unless you've already marked your ballot, that's why I was kind of hoping that I'm going to get a chance before the ballots were marked to please consider me as being one of those individuals. But you know, too late now. So you know. I haven't marked mine yet, but I'm going to. So,
my
Chairman,
apology.
in fairness to the other 2, I would suggest you do the same thing there. But the ballots are already marked. I know that. So, you know, it's just working in reverse. So, I really do challenge it, to be very honest with you. I honestly
I agree, Your Worship. We do have enough ballots that we can revote right now, but I'd like to hear from the other two candidates, Your Worship, if that's the case.
In fairness, Mr. Chairman, that's really, the way to do it because each one of the three of us should have, that opportunity. So we just missed it there.
Your Worship, I recognize.
If there's enough ballots, I'd suggest that they go back and be reissued.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Chairman, I might say that the other two individuals be afforded the same time that I had. Thank you.
Your Worship, I accept your challenge because I did jump the gun there, and this is my first time doing this, so I'm learning on the job, and along with the acting clerk here. So, you've had your minute and a half.
Yep.
Councillor Malvo, if you want to state your case.
Yeah, okay. I'll take my 2 minutes, I guess. Again, I've sat on the Hydro Board for the past 4 years, as you have, Councillor Best, and as we all know, Hydro is experiencing a lot of changes going on. The province's regulations, there's all sorts of revenue issues, and Milton Hydro is moving in a lot of different directions to generate more revenues. We've gone through a strategic planning session not too long ago that you and I were both involved in. So there's a lot of things happening at Milton Hydro right now, and I don't think it would be prudent or in the best interest of the corporation to be making changes on for the town's representation on that board. And for those reasons is why I would ask council's support to return Councillor Best and myself to the board to keep that continuity during these trying times.
In regards to my speech, ditto. You couldn't have written it better, Councillor Malvo, so I won't have any further comments. Can we just reissue the ballots so we make sure we do this properly, and I'll make sure we don't make that mistake the second time? I already said it. Councillor Challoner.
Yeah, I think you might want to allow the mayor to say a few words.
I thought I already did. Okay, well, you could have your rebuttal.
I'll just echo once again. I ask for your consideration. Believe it or not, and I heard what it said, but the town of Milton's the only one that doesn't have the mayor, and it might even be the only one in the GTA. If you want to make one other thing, I've been asked how come I don't appoint people to certain committees. I've never done that, and as long as I'm going to be here, I won't do that either. I could appoint myself, believe it or not. It's not the way that I operate, so I just ask for your consideration. Plain simple.
Thank you. Any questions to the candidates? Councillor Hamid.
Not the candidates, just to clarify, do we get the ballot again, or like what's happening?
You will receive a new ballot.
Yeah, we're making sure everybody gets equal time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, reissue the ballots here.
So again, Mr. Chairman, you're entitled to vote for up to 2 candidates this time.
You mean there's no plunking? Those who don't know what plunking is where you just vote for one person, usually yourself.
And again, Mr. Chair, the result, each ballot is a public ballot, so I'll be reading the results for each ballot. For the position of Milton Hydro Holding Board of Directors, Councillor Hamid voted for Mayor Krantz and Councillor Malbuth. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen voted for Councillor Best and Councillor Malbuth. Councillor Malbuth voted for Councillor Best and Councillor Malbuth. Councillor Di Lorenzo voted for Councillor Best and Mayor Krantz. Councillor Challoner voted for Mayor Krantz and Councillor Malbuth. Mayor Krantz voted for Mayor Krantz. Councillor Ali voted for Councillor Best and Councillor Malbuth. Councillor Cluett voted for Councillor Best and Councillor Malbuth. Councillor Best voted for Councillor Best and Councillor Malbuth. I'll just tally those up. Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Chair, it would appear we have two winners based on the votes. Councillor Malbouf received 7 votes. Councillor Best received 6 votes. And Mayor Krantz received 4 votes. So 2 did receive the majority of over 5, and that's the result. Councillor Best and
Thank you.
Councillor Malbouf.
Thank you, everyone, for your support. Moving on now to Budget Chair. We have 2 candidates, Councillor Cluett and Councillor Hamid. Councillor Cluett, do you want to have your 2 minutes of speech? Councillor Malbouf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we vote on this, I just want to make a suggestion and to members of council. What I'm looking at is, since there's only 2 candidates in the Budget Chair, there's 2 people interested in it. My suggestion would be that the 2 of them, that we alternate. One does it one year, the other one does it the next year. I've spoken to both candidates. They agree to it. I think that would be the fairest issue. It gives them both some exposure, experience in that role. So that would be my suggestion, and I'll take guidance from councilor or the clerk if we can just do that, and both candidates are agreeable to that. So.
Councillor Mead?
Yes, I second that.
Councillor Cluett?
Well, I had a nice 2-minute long speech and everything else, but
that's why I spoke first.
No, I agree with the solution that's been provided. Councillor Mead has already done the 2019 budget, and I guess that would start with me being for the 2020, and for the rest of the term have us alternate. I'm fully supportive.
Okay. Any questions as to the arrangement? Mr. Clerk, is that acceptable to your motion?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. The motion would be changed to reflect that, and that would be part of the recommendation we'll be voting on when we get all the names in.
Any questions? If not, Councillor Malbouf, they could use you down in the U.S. Congress.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the 3rd position is for the Halton Healthcare Board of Directors. We're looking for 1 representative, and should council agree, we would also look for a substitute in the event that the representative is unable to attend those meetings. That's the way that committee has been formatted.
Okay, anyone?
If either candidate wishes to speak and on their behalf, and then we'll pass out the ballots.
Councillor Mead and Councillor De Lorenzo.
Sure, I can speak first. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't prepare anything because I didn't realize that this was going to vote until this morning. That said, though, I'm very interested in Halton Healthcare Services. Generally, I've been interested in healthcare outside of council as well. I'm involved in things that relate to community services and healthcare. The other thing is that this is really a regional committee. It oversees 3 hospitals in Milton, Oakville, and Halton Hills. Georgetown already. So I think as a regional councillor, I'll be able to bring that experience as well and kind of bridge the 2. So I'm hoping that I can appeal to council to get your votes. Thank you.
Councillor Lorenzo.
I've read the terms of reference, the responsibilities of the board. I am involved with Milton District Hospital. I realize that there's 3 hospitals, part of Halton Healthcare, as well as the mental health and the diabetes and other community locations. I've studied all the community locations, all 3 hospitals. The responsibilities of the board to enforce the Public Hospital Act, the hospital management regulations, and the bylaws of the community. I've seen all of the meetings. The councillor is mandated to be on the quality committee from 7:30 to 9, as well as the quarterly and the monthly meetings. I've spoken to the board members about what the quality committee involves. I've been involved with Milton District Hospital for over 10 years. In the past, there has been a local councillor appointed to Halton Healthcare Services, so it's not a requirement that it be a regional councillor. There is no remuneration for this position. I've cleared time with my employer for this, and I'm very engaged for Halton Healthcare, and I think I would make an excellent candidate for the position. At the same time, I recognize Councillor Hamid has interest in that position as well, and I recognize his name for it at the same time. Thank you.
Any further speakers on this item? If not, we have the ballots passed around.
Again, Mr. Chair, you're voting for just one individual.
Councillor Clode, a question?
Quick question, I guess, to the chair. Seeing as how we have the recommendation here, says that one councillor would be appointed to the board of directors and another one be a substitute. Would it be logical that a motion, or is a motion required, that should the person be chosen by a ballot, chose to be the sitting member, and the second person be chosen as the substitute member for that motion? I don't know if that requires a motion on our behalf or an agreement by the people who are up for election. But
Mr. Chair, the question is, do you want a substitute on that committee as well? So if that's the case, then after the vote is tallied, that motion would be appropriate if you felt it necessary.
I'll be prepared to put that motion forward afterwards, if it's agreeable to everybody.
I'll keep that in mind. Councillor Meade.
Just question, clarification, Mr. Chair. The new motions that were given to us just as we arrived, number 10 does say that first one be appointed as Halton Healthcare Board Director, and the next one be appointed as substitute.
So that council would have the opportunity to decide if they did want a substitute. Someone can say they want to be the substitute, but I think council needs to agree to that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, all right. Councillor Meade voted for Councillor Meade. Councillor Tester-Dirksen voted for Councillor Meade. Councillor Melbuff voted for Councillor Meade. Councillor Di Lorenzo voted for Councillor Di Lorenzo. Councillor Chalner voted for Councillor Meade. Mayor Krantz voted for Councillor Meade. Councillor Ali voted for Councillor Meade. Councillor Cluett voted for Councillor Meade. Councillor Best voted for Councillor Di Lorenzo. So, Mr. Chair, the vote carries 7-2 for Councillor Hamid.
Okay. Councillor Cluett, you had a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion, I guess, would be that if, given the results of the election for this, that Councillor Hamid be appointed as the member of the Halton Healthcare Services Board, and if agreeable, Councillor Di Lorenzo to be named as the substitute, should Councillor Hamid not be able to make any meetings.
Do I have a seconder? Yes, a second by Councillor Ali. Councillor Di Lorenzo, is that your wish as well?
I'm agreeable to that. Thank you, Councillor Cluett, for proposing it.
Okay, is there any questions to the motion? Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Now we have the final resolve, moved by Councillor Ali, seconded by Councillor Cluett. Be resolved the appointments for this term becomes reference as necessary. Any questions? If not, all those in favor? Motion's carried. I take it you destroy the ballots?
They will be, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a chimney? Moving on to item 2, staff report, the 2019 interim tax levy bylaw. Any questions to this item? If not, moved by Councillor Ali, second by Councillor Cluett, be resolved that staff be authorized to bring forward the appropriate bylaws for consideration to provide the due dates and collection of the year 2019 interim taxes as aligned by CORS 004-19, subject to the minor technical amendments that may be required. Any questions on this item? If not, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on to item number 3, the loan guarantee, the Milton Hydro Battery Project. I am not going to read out the whole thing. Any questions to this motion? It's moved by Councillor Ali, second by Councillor Cluett. All those in favor? Opposed? Any? Motion's carried. Now move to item 4, which is on your amendment. This is the staff report, CORS 006-19, the authorization of the 2019 capital expenditures, which is on your desk. Any questions, the items? Councillor Cluett?
Just a quick comment, Your Worship. Sorry about that. Mr. Chair, regarding the Louis St. Laurent and Vickerman Way to the fourth line, it's glad to see that project moving forward in continuation. Residents in Ward 3 have actually been very vocal with their approval of getting it done, and to our friends over at Craig Kielburger High School who have been waiting a very long time for this project, they're very thankful. They'll be more than happy to take a little bit of the aggravation of the construction in order to get it done. And as well for the asphalt overlay program, Bronte Street is definitely something that you and I have heard over the last couple of years, especially with the construction. Question to staff, and I know it's probably in there, but just for the notification of the public about the installation of a traffic signal at Heslop and Bronte. Is that in the approved area of this project, or is that subject to budget approval on February 4th?
Mr. Cripps?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is subject to budget approval. It's not part of this list, but we will endeavor, subject to approval, to get it done as part of the same contract.
Thank you very much. I know that you and I have heard a number of comments from people driving along Bronte Street, north and south, the need for that type of traffic installation, so we're looking forward to February 4th now.
Any further questions this item? Moved by Councillor Ali, second by Councillor Cluett. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item number 5. Okay, this is the CORS 007-19, outsourcing dog licensing. We have a motion here. Any questions to this report? This is the one that Councillor Malbrough has a conflict on. If being none, it's moved by Councillor Ali, seconded by Councillor Cluett. And I'll read this out because it is a big report. Is be it resolved that Council approve the single source award for DocuPet for the animal licensing services for a 1-year period with the option to renew the services for 2 additional 1-year periods, and that the town clerk be authorized to present the necessary amendment to the animal control bylaw to Council for approval, and that the manager of purchasing and risk management be authorized to execute the contracts as outlined in the purchasing bylaw, and the mayor and town clerk be authorized to sign any of the required paperwork subject to the satisfaction of the town solicitor. All those in favour? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Item number 6, the staff report to ES-03-19, the service delivery review. Do you have any questions to this? Sorry, you had some comments from staff? No. Okay, if there's any questions of staff? If not, I'll read it out because it is quite involved. Reports moved by Councillor Ali, seconded by Councillor Cluett. Be it resolved that the service delivery review scope of work as presented in ES-003-19 as outlined in Schedule A be approved. That Council approve the proposal award for professional consulting services for service delivery reviews on a roster basis to Blackline Consulting, MNP LLP, and Deloitte LLP, and when required for a period of February 1st, 2019 to January 31st, 2022, as outlined in Schedule B. That the manager of purchasing and risk management be authorized to execute the contracts as outlined by the purchasing bylaw, and the mayor and the town clerk be authorized to sign any required paperwork. Any questions to this motion? If not, all those in favour? Opposed? Motion's carried. Yeah. We're going to be dealing with the bylaws after the confidential purchase area. And just make sure I've got everything. Yeah, just making sure I got everything covered here. We have regional council update. Mayor Krantz and other councillors. Mayor Krantz.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, it's quite a lengthy council meeting at the region Wednesday. Past there, a lot of business was achieved, but I think one of the great achievements that happened at the region of Halton, they did pass their budget, had a 1.9% increase there. So I just want to highlight and congratulate the region of Halton for coming in at less than the rate of inflation. So thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Cluett. Councillor Melba for Councillor Hamid.
No, just echo the mayor's words, and yeah, it was a long day, but the budget was passed, and now that we work as a committee as a whole, the five of us are hearing the same thing, making the same report. So maybe we should alternate making the councillor's statements. But
Councillor Hamid, equal time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Just make a suggestion, Town Clerk, that if you could just alternate right on the agenda, that way we'll know to prepare the report properly. Some of the town committees do that as well, specifically the Library Board. Thank you.
Yeah, I have two quick items. One announcement that the mayor heard actually on Tuesday was the regional review as well as the places to grow review. So I expect the planning department not only here but also the region is going to be very busy. Also I have an AMO board meeting on Thursday and Friday, so we're going to be very involved, as well as the Roma conference where a number of delegations are being made to provincial ministers by Halton regional councillors. So if anyone's going, I really appreciate your support because we have a lot on the agenda. Mayor Krantz, you had something?
Just, Mr. Chairman, just on the point that Councillor Melboof made with regards to the alternating, and it makes a lot of sense. There's two of us now that sit on two of the committees. Councillor Melboof and I sit on Administration Finance. So alternate between he and I. Same with you and Councillor Cluett. There's only one individual in this room that's not going to alternate. That's Councillor Hamid. He's the sole individual on Health and Social Service. So I just want to be clear how it will work. So.
Just to let everybody know that Planning and Public Works is still the hardest working committee at the region. Oh.
The Chairman, you wouldn't get an argument from me on that either, because I know I served on it. I know the work that's done there.
I'm still waiting. If there's no further items on the regional council update, staff advised me that we don't need to go in camera regarding the confidential item. Is there any? Yeah, unless someone wants to. Is there anyone in council? Councillor Challoner?
Could you explain why there's no need to go in camera? Are you withdrawing the item?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a simple a report on the minutes of settlement that have been drawn up, unless there's some questions with respect to what's being decided upon. My suggestion is that you could just pass it as an item.
Okay, was there not another item that we were going in camera on?
That was at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Councillor Chairman.
Okay, if there being no further questions on this, we have a motion by Councillor Ali and second by Councillor Cluett. Be resolved the recommendations contained in staff report PD 004-19 be approved. Any questions? I believe this is the in-camera report we're talking about. If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Mr. Clerk, we now deal with the bylaws. Yeah, see, I am keeping up. Moved by Councillor Ali and second by Councillor Cluett. Be resolved that bylaws number 01 to 05 be read, passed, and numbered, and the mayor and town clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaws, seal of the corporation, and that be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions regarding the bylaws? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Mr. Clerk, have I missed anything? If not, I would call adjournment. Thank you, everyone.